Well, tell me, give me
So,
some perspective on what you woke
okay,
up, what it was
I
feeling like.
started writing it all down so that my thoughts would be clear because it tends to go all over the place on tangents. So, like, when we first talked, I had a very strong reaction to you saying that like the eating the problem with all this stuff is like my own narcissism, and I'm like, I mean, I've never thought of myself as a narcissist, and I've been in relationships with them, and I'm always the one who's like keeping my mouth shut, making sure I'm not rocking the boat, like always making sure like I'm thinking about the other person first, all that kind of stuff. And I was like,
Yeah, the co-narcissist.
and so
Do you see that? That's
um,
co-narcissism.
when you think about the other person first,
You're accommodating to someone, like you said, I'm the one that's accommodating to that type. I've been with those types of people, and you're the one who's accommodating, right?
always.
You're a co-narcissist. That means you're on the compliant side, not the controlling side, but the one that has to match or meet the standards. So can you see how that unconsciously conditions you to hold yourself to those types of standards? So
Yeah,
it's different than
also,
so the way that they describe it, there's not just one type of narcissist, first of all, and it's not like all or nothing. It's a spectrum. Um, there's also the compliant person that gets trained and conditioned to function that way. So the one of the ways that it's been described in many ways. There's the victim of narcissistic syndrome. That's the person that's accommodating. So you have a syndrome, like a battered wife syndrome of narcissism. The compliance to the narcissism, that would also be called a co-narcissist, like codependency. You are a co-narcissist. The other description, the grandiose narcissist, is the one that always needs the spotlight, always needs to be right, the one in control. A grandiose narcissist, to be grandiose, requires the vulnerable narcissist. So you would be considered the vulnerable side of it, right? Again, the grandiose narcissist truly believes, because they have to survive, they are superior to others. They continue to put others below them. They think that they're, superiorly special just as they are. Their shit don't stink. They're not likely to reach out for help because they think they're superior to the therapist. On the other side of that is a vulnerable narcissist who is complying and feeding and supporting and providing for that mentality. So you inadvertently get conditioned by it. So the symptoms seem narcissistic, but in reality, you're just being kind of held hostage to meet these standards. And because there's a fantasy or grandiosity that you're seeking, you inadvertently become that on the passive side, right?
wow. Well, because I thought about it, I'm like, do I feel superior to people that I would judge as fat?
Probably
No.
not.
I mean,
Yeah.
I see so many beautiful people that are like all different sizes and weights, and I'm like, wow, it'd be so amazing to just like be able to eat the way they do and like still be like beautiful and
Yeah,
happy.
so this is typical of someone on the vulnerable side of narcissism. So what is also typical and would be the next thought, which is, I don't hold anybody else to these standards. I hold myself to those standards. I love everybody else deserves love and compassion, but I have to meet these standards. Do you see how that's a symptom of the co-narcissism? For me to feel loved or lovable, or to feel that I'm worthy of love, I'm holding myself to these really high standards.
Yeah.
Okay, that's narcissistic. Can you see that there's a narcissism involved in that? Like, you're superior, so you have to hold yourself to superior standards, but everybody else is inferior and they get to love themselves as they are in their inferiority.
Oh, see, but I don't see them as inferior.
But they get the freedom to not meet these standards because this is where you're not consciously seeing it.
Yeah.
You actually do believe they get freedom because they're not held to the same standard They don't have to. But you know what? You have higher expectations. Don't judge it. Don't judge that thought. But that's the feeling that's in there.
There's other layers too of this shit. And I'm like, I remember being like 3 and like turning to like my aunt gave me a jar of peanut butter when I was really sad that my parents weren't going to come back for me. And then like when I got chubby as a 3-year-old, then my parents wanted to drop me off there more. They didn't want me around. They would talk about how other kids, you know, were like slimmer and all this other stuff. And so then I would just eat more peanut butter.
You're just confused. Totally. You're just confused. You don't really know or have any awareness around the emotion you're feeling, the insecurity. You wouldn't know it's anxiety. You wouldn't know it's insecurity, but you do know that this food tastes good. And for a moment, you don't have to think because you're distracted. So it's really not about the food or the peanut butter. It's the distraction from the stress you don't know how to verbalize or even understand why is there. So she is a 3-year-old.
True. And then it happened again when I was in high school. I had all the responsibility of taking care of my brothers in the house and making the food. And both my parents went through this 6-year battle with alcoholism. So I was like the grown-up.
Yeah. And you are held to a higher standard. You have to function higher. And the problem occurs when you identify by it as a quality or so when you take that type of coping mechanism and the survival mode energy and you develop a sense of self with that, like, and a worth. So there's a pride that you might attach to my capacity, and I'm more mature, it's very, if you think about that time in your life, it's understandable because you don't really know who you are or have a sense of your true self, why you would attach worth to these high standards. Right? You have to, because that's how you're surviving. Yeah. But when you attach pride to them is when they become a trap. It becomes a trap.
Which is exactly, I ended up feeling that I had to take care of my brothers because nobody else was going to. And I was like, well, you know, if I can take care of myself, I can take care of them too. Otherwise, they're just going to be like
messed up. So the other aspect to add to this, because it's not one thing. So to look at this linearly would be inadequate. You got to look at this like a soup, like a syndrome. Okay, it's that.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the pride you took and in your capacity. There is a sense of worth and superiority in that because you didn't have a choice. But the attachment to pride is where that creates the trap, because now you have to keep on going to maintain your sense of success. You have to always be above and beyond the norm. That's the narcissism, right? So then there's also the reality of survival to just function, but the fact that you don't want to feel like a loser. You don't want to feel like, you're inadequate, you're kind of the lower dregs of society. So you're kind of fighting that stigma, right? That my parents are suffering from mental health issues, clearly. And you might have judged them for that because you're not aware. You're a teenager and a child. You don't have the ability to have relative awareness to see your parents were suffering and struggling and carry shame and horrible remorse, but don't know how to cope or talk about it. So they drink, right? So there's also the aspect of a teenager who is completely ignorant, and the likelihood that you're shaming and judging your parents is probably very high at that age. It would be surprising for any teenager not to shame their parents under the circumstance, right? But that's very narcissistic to do if you're ignorant. Super ignorant to reality. You have no idea what it's like to function with mental health issues with children you don't even know how to take care of because you can't even take care of yourself. And the depression and shame that they're carrying on top of all that. And so as a teenager, you're just shaming your parents and thinking, I'm going to be better than them. So there's another form of, you see how these, when you add them together, of course you're going to suffer from some narcissism beyond the norm, right? Narcissism on one hand is very beneficial. It is what drives, a hard work ethic. There's a lot of energy that is important for a kid to flee the nest, to be able to take risks. There's a sense of competence that comes with narcissism that allows you to work your ass off. So there's a upside to it. It's not all bad. We all have it in some respect under certain circumstances. So it's not something to be ashamed of, nor is it a put down. It's only a put down to someone who's a narcissist, right? Who thinks that they're not that. You are, on some degree. There's nothing wrong with it. It is what you needed, and you could say it's a huge part of why you got out of that environment successfully. The problem is functioning in that.
It's in my house. I literally have recreated exactly the same situation.
Well, you don't know anything else. You don't know any alternative. You've never existed. Your brain has never functioned in an alternative way to then compare and go, oh, well, this is toxic. But you don't know that. You do know you can survive in it. So can you see why then someone who is suffering, you would want to be a rescuer? So you go into the rescuing role, which is highly, first of all, it gives you a sense of control. So you get to dominate, which in a way protects you from vulnerability. But it doesn't, don't you agree? Isn't that a lot to ask of anybody just for neutrality? To dominate and control everybody just to feel neutral? You don't even get the benefit of pleasure. It's just safety. You're just doing it out of safety. And people who are suffering would be absolutely attracted to it because it gives them a sense of safety. Someone can care for them that is more competent.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, nothing that you're living in is wrong. It is absolutely how this works. You've done a good job at it. It's just it's a trap of hell because there's no joy. It's all just survival mode.
Yeah.
Right? So you're constantly Go ahead.
If I remove this giant coping mechanism, which is there in my face,
you won't even know how to function. You won't know how to function.
No.
It will feel like if you get a sense of that space, you said, I can see there's an exit. It will seem like a rebirth to, you don't even know. There's no concept of that way of functioning. You've never functioned that way. So it feels like new and vulnerable because there's no edges or lines that you can control.
No, I don't know how to be.
I know.
I'm not in that. And
so it's the bizarrest thing because this narcissistic functioning, even if it is full of misery, full of abuse, full of mental health issues, the weird illusion is that it gives you a sense of control over it. So at least you know what to expect, even though the expectation is complete and total misery and suffering and fatigue and eventual death. But you have to pull back and ask, okay, so this is what I know. Is there an alternative that's not as shitty? So it's really, and this is what I had to say to myself with my narcissism in religion, is that I'm supposed to be this superior religion of which I'm miserable in. And of course it's super controlling. All I got to do is follow these rules, but I suck at following the rules because I'm a human being and these are kind of inhumane rules. So the only way to recover is to either suicide, continue to have this empty life with nothing, being completely controlled in a safe environment, or I let it go, which I don't know what else exists because I've been so totalitarianly controlled by these environments, right? And you could say you don't know any other way to exist. The only thing you know is that everything sucks and there's a fantasy that feels like pleasure. It's pleasurable to fantasize for you. Like you're getting off like it's cocaine on fantasy. Because it's the only alternative is to fantasize, right?
Wow, this is giving me a headache. It's I'm insane. I feel like I'm
Well, just to relax into it. You don't have to memorize any of this, because you can just hear it and go true. You just feel it. If anything, it should be helping you open your freaking throat.
Yeah.
Like there's a voice to this. There's a voice. There is a story that can be expressed, and it's gracious and forgiving and understanding. And you don't have to be defined by this. The way you functioned in true up until this point is really evolution working perfectly. everything you've been impulsively doing, the impulse to control things, all of that is a survival mechanism hardwired into me, you, and everybody you know. It's just triggered in certain environments that feel insecure. What you could, if we want to simplify this, if we could go back to your childhood, the judgment and shame and the feelings that your life sucks, the victim position that was taken without any compassion with your parents, that's the actual, you could say the poison began there. It's not the fact that you had to take care of your siblings. It was the lack of compassion to your parents and the victim position, which positions you to overreach to prove that you're not as shitty as them because you're shaming them. So if you could go back and not change a thing, but you could keep this wisdom, I guarantee what you would do is you would do the same thing you always have, but you would not shame your parents. Period. You would just accept that this is what you're being asked to do, and you would do it willfully because you're competent to do it. And you would not position yourself as superior to your parents, even though you're clearly functioning higher.
Right. That makes sense.
And where would you be today if you could go back and have that compassion and love for your parents without needing to change them or telling them that they suck and they're supposed to be different than that? Because you're not giving them any context, right, around why they became that way, and why they are incompetent to handle their own life, let alone handle children, right?
Yeah.
Does that define them as human beings? Is there at the core?
No.
Of course not. They're good people. I know you know that. They just don't know how to function any different either. So when you are the one who's aware that, okay, we have to integrate into society, my parents are not clearly in the state of mind to do it because of their substance abuse and because their unwillingness to face their fear and to forgive themselves. That's actually the key. They are unwilling to forgive themselves. If you could hold that space, how would you feel doing the same exact work you did?
I can't be there yet. I can't, because as soon as I did, I started to hear all the words to me about how I'm not allowed to do anything, and I can't. I mean.
Okay, so let me rephrase it and let's try it again. Because you went right back into your victim position. Poor me.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so how's that going to work out for you?
It'll be shitty.
Yeah, so let's rethink it. Just rethink what you would do different, knowing what you know now. Why don't you open yourself to your heart? Because your heart has a totally different answer. You just refused to say it. I know you felt it. You just said, well, but then I'm not a victim, and I can't take that because I'm a victim. So now let's tell the truth.
The only thing I can imagine is that.
No, it's not.
I believe in past lives.
Okay, so let's remove that thought. Just stop. You just already escaped it. Go back to the original question and your original feeling that you just ignored, because I know it was there.
About feeling abandoned?
No, that's a victim position. Poor me. Again, holding your parents to some fucked up level of existence they don't exist in. They're clearly suffering. Is it really about you and no one wanting to be with you? For you, self-centered you, narcissism, right? That's the original thought process coming from, how old were you?
3.
So that's how old you were when you took that thought, of course. Narcissism. That's around that age, right? Self-centered, I want what I want, and if you don't give it to me, you're an enemy, and I'm a victim. Sounds like a 3 to 5-year-old, right? Okay, so you are an adult, and you had an answer. So you continue to deny. Am I crazy? Am I off my rocker to actually sit here and go, you just skipped over the real answer. You won't even answer it. I know you know it. I know you felt it. I think there's something you like about being a victim. So this is something you need to address.
Am I supposed to say it was all my fault?
No, just go back to the original question. Knowing what you know. today. And know what you know about your parents, their circumstance, their history, what brought them to this place. Because you are an adult and I know you understand it. Add that to the story. Would you still become a poor me, victim, martyr, boo-hoo? Would you still take that position?
No, I'd probably run away.
Well,
I probably would have taken my brothers and run away like I wanted to when we lived in Alabama.
Okay, let's try it again. Some of that I'm assuming is to some degree true, but you didn't. So remember, we're not going to change anything other than your attitude. You know what I'm saying? It's like when I had to do this, I had to go back into rape. I'm not going to change rape. How would I respond differently to rape?
Yeah, I mean,
you can.
You did?
Yeah, of course. If I didn't, I'd be a victim just like you in my narcissistic state of poor me, and I'd be stuck in this loop of narcissism trying to fix what I can't fix because I'm still a damaged victim. So until you're aware of it, you got to go into it with wisdom. Like add the wisdom. A child or a teenager or a young adult is, if you go into victim position, just think about that. You're powerless. It's their fault.
Actually, there was something huge that came out of that entire life that I've had so far, even now, what I've done.
Well, of course.
The amount of creative
coping. So let's go back. Rewind. Go back. Let's go back to the question I asked, and I want you to really think and tell the truth. Don't tell me your story. Don't take on the same persona, narcissism, and then tell me the story. Because your story sucks, and you know it sucks, and why would you keep on perpetuating that story if there's a different alternative that will come up and you know, and it's actually truthful. So don't give me some story. I want a truth. Okay? I know it might sound like I'm coming at you, but everything you're saying is coming from the narcissism. Right? So let's stop it. What is a different answer? Because there is one. You're just skimming over it. It does exist. It did come up. You felt it. I know you did. Some of what you were describing before you were there, and then you were like, I'm a victim. I would leave. They abandoned me. That's fine. Okay. Throw your tantrum. Now let's go back and relive it differently, because I know you can. Trust me. This isn't my first rodeo, and this is an easy rodeo. Okay? In relation to some of the shit that people have experienced in life. And I'm not saying it's not shit. I'm just saying I know there's an effort here that you're refusing to take. Okay? So let's try it again. And it's not conscious. You're not consciously doing this. I'm trying to make it conscious for you to see. Okay?
Okay.
So take your wisdom, your inner wisdom. You're far more aware of how your parents' suffering, their clear inability, clear immaturity, it's because of their history and how they don't know how to function any different. And on top of that, their inner shame because they don't know how to function different. They don't know how to fix it. Okay?
Okay.
Knowing that, how would you respond? How would you feel about it? How would you think about it? And again, you can't change anything except for your perception.
I would feel bad for them.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would.
And I would also then say to them, you guys, it's okay, I got the boys.
Oh, notice.
I love my brothers. I love my brothers.
I know. So you didn't. So that's why I was like, you wouldn't do anything different. I know that.
No, definitely.
But notice the feeling, how different this feels. How does it feel? This viewpoint.
Free.
Oh, so you know how quickly you came to this? You knew it. This was your original answer, and notice how you skipped over it to go to poor me. You had this feeling, and you said, fuck that. I'm a victim, and they abandoned me. And I had to do all this work. Notice how you went to that story. Do you see how that story, and in that story, it benefits you, doesn't it? There's a weird sense of, yeah, they suck.
Yeah.
That's narcissism. It's like you're getting off on it. That was you get benefit out of that. So if you want to recover, guess what? You have to let go. You're no better than them. You're the same. You're struggling just as much as they are in a different way. You're just an OCD. You're just addicted to something a little bit more narcissistic. This grandiose fantasy world that is super symptomatic of narcissism. It's the fantasy world. Okay? Don't judge yourself. You're trying to escape just like they were. They just chose a different method that was probably more common at their time and generation.
Wow.
So if you could go back and rethink this whole thing, maintain your wisdom, won't change the situation. You wouldn't take them so serious either, would you? The stuff they said, you'd just be like, oh, they are super special needs. You'd probably reach out to counselors, school counselors. You would get help and assistance. Let them be. Yeah. Notice how different that feels.
It's
Yeah,
empowering.
and it is loving, and you wouldn't have to fight. There's no fight. It's just doing your chores, doing what has to get done. It's not in spite. And what happened to the resentment?
It just starts to dissolve.
Yeah. Why would you hold that? Notice how that feels as it goes away. How does it feel to let it go?
It's like a fist that's been gripping my heart, opening up.
Right? Just feel how it, and now let's think about how you are now free to love your parents just the way they are and have compassion for them. You don't have to have pity. You can just have compassion and go, oh, they are fucked up and they need help and they don't know it, and they are getting help with alcohol. They don't know how to do this. And of course they're going to go to alcohol. It's the perfect match to their depression, to the shame that they're feeling. I mean, it is like, I call it Jesus juice. It's total grace in it. Yeah.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah. It's,
oh my God.
It's grace. It's grace in a bottle.
That is unbelievable. You're right.
I know. So you're going to shame them for doing something that actually gives them a sense of freedom for once, from feeling horrible about themselves? I'm not saying we should encourage that. It's just, why do we have to shame people for behavior? It's no different than someone who's reaching towards anorexia to feel a sense of worth.
Yeah.
Again, to me, the self-centered nature of survival mode, which is narcissistic by nature, it's called self-preservation. Of course, if you are in your own soul space feeling threatened with yourself, why wouldn't you reach out to get help with a substance or a behavior or a fantasy or a religion? Why wouldn't you? That does not seem crazy to even suggest you don't reach out when you feel like you are a shitty ass piece of person inherently. Why wouldn't you want to gravitate to some form of grace or control? That makes more sense than anything to me. It's nonsensical to even think that someone in that state wouldn't try to defend their life and protect their life. You're the same. You're doing the same thing with your fantasy world. To me, it's of course she's going to do that. It protects her from her shitty life that she's degrading and better than, but has to deal with, and all the resentment and basic poison in your brain that you've been living in with these thoughts. Of course you're going to reach for something outside of yourself. Of course you're going to try to strive for the perfect marriage.
I've never imagined a perfect marriage. I just don't want.
Yeah, but something better than that. It doesn't have to have edges. It's just whatever it is. It's a fantasy.
life that I'm living. My husband has not had a shower in 3 weeks and is awake maybe 45 minutes a day, and he can't feel his feet anymore, and he won't go to a doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm just, that's just got like a little bit of chaos thrown into my system, I think, because I'm kind of freaking out.
Well, yeah.
I do.
You have to let go of the fantasy. And the funny thing is, your fantasy is just, yeah, because you're imposing your issues onto him. And again, it's like, my issues are that I want a healthy marriage. Well, you're not dealing with someone who's capable. It's like asking your parents to function like healthy. You're not dealing with people. So who's the narcissist in this relationship? Again, I'm not shaming you. I want you to just be aware and have truth at your fingertips, because it will set you free. Having that truth to recognize, oh, the only way out of this.
It's scary to let go, because I feel like if I let go, he's gonna die.
Well, is he yours? Is this your responsibility? No. Oh, so do you see how you've permeated? There's a codependency here where you get something out of making him better, right? And whose job is that? And so it's a personal, yeah. So not that you don't love this person, but this means you failed and you suck. To the narcissism, that's what it feels like, right? You couldn't help him.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't help in a twisted sort of way that my parents did stop drinking just before I left home. Like, and they have a drink too.
Oh my God, good for them.
Yeah, no, it was really, they didn't cold turkey, they didn't do AA, they just were like, you know what, this is enough.
We're done. We have to function. We have to face our problems. That's amazing. Good for them. That's the heart. I'm asking you to do the same thing. You know, it's just not a substance that you're codependent with. It's this idea that you have to rescue people.
Yep.
And you have to let that go.
Oh my God, and that's why I have 9 dogs and 12 cats.
It gives you a sense of existence, but should anybody?
And I rescue them. They're all rescued.
Yes, because it's loving, but it gives you a sense. You've created an identity around that's your purpose. But to be honest with you, if you could go back, not to say you don't love these animals or you don't care or don't want them to do well, but would you, if you were truthful and authentic and weren't overcompensating, is that really the truth of your nature, truthfully, to overreach to that degree?
Guys are really great.
I know. I'm not saying that. Don't make it about them. Look at yourself. Is it true to your nature to overreach to this degree? Should any human being have to take on such a heavy burden just to feel that they've done something right? No. Now, when you hear it from that perspective, it seems cruel and unusual, doesn't it? That's no wonder, because you're a slave. You become trapped because you have no boundaries, right? And that's part of what happens is you lose touch with your own personal space and boundaries. So part of recovery is that you develop a sense of who you really are, and that comes with boundaries. You're not willing to take on someone else's drama that they're not willing to take on themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to you saying, I feel like there's this exit, I can feel it, but there's all this, let's talk about that. Remember, I was like, try to write it out, try to express what this is, because then it'll clearly help you and me here. Is this the darkness that you're having a hard time escaping? Is the history? The role, the identity? Okay. So...
well, the fact that I believe I've made this weight focusing into the issue that I can focus on, so I don't have to look at some of the things in reality.
Oh, totally. Oh my God. It's like giving you a sense of control over who your own space. The fantasy, again, because it is a fantasy, is that you will feel successful at something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel like a total failure, loser, piece of shit. The shame that is at the foundation of all mental health issues is here. And so you have to look at your history and, is this really worthy of shame? Is it really worthy of shame when you think about how you got here and what you were raised and what your perceptions that you took on as a child? You didn't have an adult to help you process anything. So you kept this childish viewpoint. Has it ever really matured? No. A child would take on 10 pets. And, 10 dogs and 9 cats. Of course they would. They have no boundaries. They don't realize what they just committed to, which is to be lifeless, because their life is more important than yours.
Wow.
Right? So is this worthy of compassion for you? How this has all ended up?
Absolutely.
Totally. There's a story. It's like a book. Someone could read this book and go, oh, well, of course she's crazy. That's not crazy. She's not crazy in her crazy. That makes sense. There's actual logic and sense involved with everything she's done. If that's the case, should you be ashamed of yourself? No, you've done everything as perfectly as you could with what you were aware of, with what you thought about, the story you thought it was. You've done everything. What grade would you get under the circumstance? A++. So your integrity. Would you agree, if you tap into your integrity and intentions, have you ever been dark and malicious? Ever? No. Even in your I'm better than them, they suck pieces of shit. You really didn't intend to be superior or derogatory. You didn't. It was like an actual coping mechanism to try to make things better. And just feeling and recognizing the reality that you were existing in, which is not necessarily what you see other people exist in. You had a comparison to realize this is fucked up. So as a child, you don't have these awarenesses to have compassion and to realize your parents' issue had nothing to do with you. What did you have to do with their alcoholism? Besides shame within themselves that they sucked as parents.
Yeah.
What did you really have to do with it? How much of it was it all centered around you?
Well, only when I would ask them this stuff and then they would talk to me and say it was my fault.
Well, that's because they would feel ashamed and they didn't know how to express the pressure. The fact that the pressure for them to quit actually promoted their drinking. Yeah. They didn't know how to express that. It's no different than when a parent suggests a child diet and stop eating. What do you think the child's going to go do?
Oh, yeah, like what I did.
Go binge in a closet. Yeah, and then you blame your parents.
Yeah.
Did your parents intend to be that way? What were they? What was the essence of their desire for you to stop eating?
They wanted me to be healthy.
Yeah, that's loving. Even if it's twisted love, it's still a loving thing. So you're just like them.
Wow. Holy crap.
How can you be any different? Right?
I swear. I mean, it's like every time I talk to you, I end up smelling ammonia. Because, like, all this crap gets released from my body. It's insane. It's like I smell like these renal fluid.
Well, you have to face your shit. You have to if you think you're going to resolve it. You can't keep on running from it with your same victim poor me story. Everything starts as a victim. Your parents have a victim story too, which is why they justified the drinking.
Yeah.
You're just the same. So the way you evolve is to let's add something to the chemistry here. What is it in our conversation in the last hour that felt peaceful, freeing? What did we add in the conversation that made it feel different?
That whole part about going back and with the wisdom I have now, how would I approach the situation? And it's true. Like okay, hold on.
What did you add to the approach?
Compassion.
Oh! Take notes. Take notes. Ooh, let's add a little compassion to the recipe. That's like having love for your parents, like loving them. Even though they're I know you do, but this is real. This isn't okay, so what you just said, let's see if we can actually understand it. I know you love them, but that's just loyalty. What I'm talking about is love. True love, not loyalty.
Right.
Very different.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I feel it.
There's a difference, isn't there? Oh.
Wow.
You've never actually felt love for your parents. You've just felt loyalty, pity. But there's all this resentment and you fucked me over and what's wrong with you and that. But that's not love, right? That's actually, that's the removal of love that you're feeling. That's like bright light turning dark. You're removing the light. So think of it like we're just adding light right now. We're going to add light to the situation. And now how do you feel about your parents?
Just good.
Yeah, they're worthy of just being loved. They should never have that much shame. They did not know what was happening. They didn't have any perspective at the time. They didn't know any other way to function. On top of the fact that their brain is getting completely distorted, you know. And anybody, okay, that gets in the way is going to be, there's going to be a projected energy of the enemy. Because what they need is keeping them safe. And any threat to that safety, what do you think you are? Even if you're their daughter. You're the enemy. That's how I treated my husband and my parents when I was when they wanted me to recover from this eating disorder. I would have rage at the fact that they didn't want me to puke. But you know what? I was going to puke and they were going to go fuck off.
Wow.
Anything that got in my way, even if it was my loving family or a sibling, it was like animal. It had nothing to do with them. I wasn't enraged at them. I was enraged at the fact that there was a threat to my survival. And they didn't know that. They just thought I was a fucking bitch. A terrible human being.
Wow.
But anybody, if drinking to them was at the time what gave them a sense of safety and control and release, like their Jesus juice of grace, anything that gets in the way of that is like, it is weirdly perceived as if they're the source of your misery. Because does that make sense? Even if they're not, the fact that they're trying to obstruct your access to what gives you a sense of life makes them an enemy. It seems as if they're causing the pain. So parents of kids that have these disorders become the enemy of the child. The child hates their parents because the parent took away the phone, the access to feeling loved and accepted by their friends. Right? You see how it's just, you're human. What have you done wrong besides survive?
Yeah.
What did your parents do wrong?
They just survived.
They were surviving. Yeah, of course. Do you think if given the opportunity to go back that they would do it different? They would quit drinking earlier. If they knew what they know now, and if they knew what it took for them to quit later in life, would they do things differently? Absolutely.
They've tried to talk to my husband about their drinking.
It's not going to help him until he's forced to do it on his own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about you. It's not about them. His issues are his issues. And who's the only person that can fix it?
Him.
Yeah.
And,
Guess how I'm approaching you?
Yeah.
I can't do shit for you.
Exactly.
All I can do is say, tell the truth, you liar. You're lying again. Lie, 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 lie. Poor you. You're taking the same stupid story. What's the truth? Right? All I am is like, I'm doing what you don't do for yourself. So I'm like an extension of your frontal cortex. That's all I'm doing is letting you borrow my brain for a little bit. That's it. I'm not going to do shit for you.
Renting space in your brain.
That's it. And I'm just blah, 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 blah. I have nothing to win or lose with your life and what happens. I have nothing.
Okay, well, I've got to drive my cameraman somewhere. We're going to go look at a WeWork space, so I've got to go. But wow, thank you so much. This is awesome.
Well, you just need to keep on chewing on it. And again, if there's anything you got out of this conversation, it's let's add compassion, true love. Like, what's the best thing if you love your husband as an individual, as someone's son? He is someone's son. Okay, he's not yours. He's his own self. What should you do right now?
Just let him be.
Stop helping. Stop. And I would say you need to say maybe those things. Hey, I love you as an individual. You don't have to recover. This is not about me, but it's your life. And you need to know that. This is your deal. And I'm willing.
It's the most freeing thing I could possibly say.
To him and to you. So just contemplate this and think separate from him. And give him the opportunity to maybe fail. Get his feet cut off. He might have diabetes, of course.
Yep.
You can't do anything for him. It's his survival. He's trying to survive. And if you get in the way, you're the enemy. You can't rescue him.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we still have more to talk about, but we'll go from here. When are we scheduled again? Really quick. Let me just make sure.
Thursday, but you may get a 911.
Well, remember when I told you how these sessions work, and I was like, oh, in the beginning, I don't even know. It could be 2 to 3 times a week, but eventually, the way that I'm processing, you start doing it on your own because it's so beneficial. It's like it feels good to just call yourself out on your own bullshit, so you start doing it on your own. Because the truth is there. It's always there. You know, like your first answer with compassion, you skipped over. I knew it was there. You just skipped over it because you don't want that. You want anger. Anger makes me feel like I've got something to work for. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to upload this and I'll text it to you. And then just let me know.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, bye.